very much. I'm Kirk Farris, and I used to work for pollution control, where I started drawing on the desk while I was at work, and I became an artist by mistake. And the first thing I want to talk to is the overview. It shows the fundamental historic points of interest in the James Butte Park Frosttown Historic Site area around the McKee Street Bridge in downtown Houston over Buffalo Bayou, which is east of US 59 and the Elysian Viaduct, and goes directly north and south. You might be familiar with being in the neighborhood of this bridge if you've gone to the Last Concert Cafe, or if you've gone to Irma's Restaurant south of there, or if you spent the night at the Star of Hope Mission, you probably would know it too. There's a great many things that are wonderfully interesting about Frosttown. And I discovered Frosttown when I was creating the first phase of the park, which was called the McKee Street Bridge Park, at the period in which I had just renovated and painted a color scheme of McKee Street Bridge and planted 54 palm trees and begun a process of cleaning up the debris and the filth in the neighborhood with the help of my friends and associates and willing partners, and some amount of money, and the formation of a new nonprofit corporation called Art and Environmental Architecture, Inc., which has been a very interesting and successful tool to utilize donated funds to continue an agenda. Sometimes it really works, and sometimes it's not working so well. But at any rate, Frosttown is a neighborhood that was an area in which was a pre-settlement area. Dr. Phelps and Mrs. Wilkins and some of the family members had settled near what is the present-day baseball stadium many years ago in 1822 when they were arriving here in Texas near the San Felipe Road or Trail, and they were there. Frosttown really wasn't there in 1822, but it is sort of credited and mixed in with that alleged story. The Frosttown site is replete with various qualities. One, it's an old, authentic neighborhood established by a defender of Texas, a man who fought at the Battle of San Jacinto and retired to this property, began to make an arrangement with the Allen brothers to buy it, built on that property, died of yellow fever, and then had his family subdivide it and sell it off into lots in 1837 and 38 or 39. They had 96 lots. They sold 38 of them rather quickly. And it was a real land boom in the developing Houston. They were mostly non-Germans that purchased this property originally, but then German immigrants came in and began to settle and develop a Germanic-style community in that area. So Frosttown is a basic 6 square blocks neighborhood with abandoned streets in downtown Houston, south of Buffalo Bayou. The other aspects that are greatly interesting, there was a Civil War fort here called Fort Humbug at the very curve of the bayou. This was an earthen fort that allegedly never even had cannons, but they were getting ready to defend against the Yankees that might come up to Houston on riverboats and try to take over, which is all very humorous since when the Yankees did come, they took the train. And they were greeted at the station. But the Battle of Galveston was an interesting point. Citizens Electric, the first power plant to sell electricity to the public, was located out here on the edge of the bayou, and it functioned just fine until it didn't. It exploded about 1892. It exploded and killed a couple of people. One was a passerby who was just innocently trying to get home. And after that, they formed something called the Houston Lighting and Power Company. They got a charter from the city, and that was the beginning of the light company as we once knew it. Now today we have Centerpoint Energy, and these people are from somewhere else, I can assure you, because they don't have the same level of concern about anything. There's a historic Westinghouse power plant out here made of red brick and had a glass roof. Fabulous building. Could have been redone and revitalized, reused, and redeveloped along the bayou. Was it, pardon me, sir?
They tore it down.
Yes, that was, why you start, don't kill my punchline. They did tear it down. Matter of fact, one day I was out there and I drove by and I said, oh, wow, they're fixing those windows. No, they're not. And it was amazing. And what even angered me so much more about that was I had personal friends that knew it was going to be torn down, and they didn't tell me because they knew I would be upset about it. But there was nothing anyone could do. You can't actually tell a private enterprise not to destroy its building when it's tired of it. We also had 3 acres of park that I had managed to establish from HL&P behind the substation, and the county was maintaining it for 26-something years. And one day, one of the executives with Centerpoint went out there and found homeless people living in the woods along the banks of the bayou and had a conniption fit. And then they were also blaming them for stealing all of their copper, so they had to get rid of it. So they wired off that section of the park. They canceled their lease, and unfortunately, the county's response to losing 3 acres of Buffalo Bayou Park was to ignore it. But anyway, I enjoyed that piece of land. I planted the Milberger turf on that property, which was the exact same grass that they were using at the baseball stadium. So baseball stadium grass is out there in that park. And many other points of interest. Crystal Ice and Fuel is on the north side of Buffalo Bayou. The foundation for that original building is still there, and it caved in a number of years ago. But I used to have a staircase down there, and I was planting a garden on that particular site. The other aspects are the neighborhood was once very prominently settled by Hispanics between 1915, gradually about 1936 it became majority Hispanic, and was Hispanic neighborhood until about 1955 when the Elysian Viaduct and the freeway connections expanded and the Clayton Homes was demolished. Well, the site for Clayton Homes was demolished. It was the old Barrio de Alacron, which was a massive setup of about 96 economically driven residential wooden buildings. One could call them shacks, I suppose. They all had outbuildings and gardens and narrow streets, unpaved. It was a place for a lot of specialized Mexican culture. There were a lot of really great beer joints, probably a lot of wonderful music coming from the area, a lot of some crime, and a baseball field that they carved out along the banks of the bayou, in which Felix Fraga learned to play, and his brother played baseball and learned to play baseball. And so a lot of people from the hood, who lived in the hood, had experience with the neighborhood, came together, and we did a marker for the Barrio de Alacron, and it's placed out there along Runnels Street in what would have been a south side of Bramble at one time, in the Texas freeway right-of-way. So that marker got done. We did a marker for the Frosttown Historic Site commemorating the original Frost family that settled it in 1836. And that story is told on a marker as well in the center of what would be Arch Street, an 18-foot wide city right-of-way that was set up there. There were several streets in Frosttown: Arch, Race, Lyle, Bramble. Runnels connected at one time. A street called Lyle. Raines was there, and before it was Raines, it was called McDonald. 1 block over, 237 feet over, was Shrimps Street. And then they had to end up in the neighborhood. They had Shrimp Alley and various streets like that. Very, very dense urban neighborhood, and there was this idea that was being developed that it had to be eliminated for urban renewal. So once that idea kicks in, everyone advertises what a bad neighborhood it is, and then they promote this thing, and then they did the Clayton Homes project. Now, I don't know whether it's good or not, but the character of Frosttown was radically changed at that point. As well as one of the other radical changes to the Frosttown community was the Elysian Viaduct, which is a very interesting bridge, and it goes across through that region. It's one of the longest bridges in the state. It's a forerunner of the modern freeway bridge. Let's use this picture now. Let's turn this picture up. This is a wood map, a map of Frosttown taken in about 1868. It shows some railroads that weren't there until 1877. I don't know how that works, but it's cute. Maybe they just go in and remark it. I don't know. But anyway, this is the Texas and Western narrow gauge. I'm always enchanted with the idea that a narrow gauge railroad ran through this neighborhood. It also ran through town and ran down Alabama and joined Westheimer. So right out here in 1877, 78, 79, something like that, you would see a locomotive going by with a bale of cotton on it out to Pattison, Texas. It didn't cross the Brazos and finally made it to Sealy. By the time it made it to Sealy, it was replaced by its competitor, the the MKT, Missouri, Kansas, and Texas. And anyway, this shows the Shrimps Field. Of course, in the camera, you can see all this much better, which was a large 38-acre grazing area. The shrimp family took on the Setagast family, and they produced a tremendous expansion of families. The Frost at this time were moving out into the neighborhood and remarrying into some of these other early German families. So an explosion of local culture, civic leadership, German culture, and mixed culture came from the occupation of this small neighborhood, which was the first practical addition to the plot and plat of the city of Houston. There may have been an earlier one like Holman Edition, but there's no evidence of Holman in existence today. So let's go to, please, let's go to McKee Street Bridge, the subject. This picture right here is the 1904 or 1907 original swing bridge located at McKee Street. It was, evidence today shows that the steel pilings on the north side are still there. You can still see the rim and the ring that held the center pole that spun this bridge. Behind it is the Bayou Compress and what was maybe the Crystal Ice Factory or a mill that predated the Crystal Ice Factory. This is looking north. Next, let's look at the street view of McKee Street Bridge, which is sort of, this is another, you know, these photographs really look good in color, by the way. So yeah. Anyway, this picture is not Patrick's picture, but it's the same subject matter. This is the color scheme that I did as an art project to the McKee Street Bridge in 1985 under a Cultural Arts Council grant and the Brown Foundation's support and the support of a lot of other individual donors. This was an interesting project. I wanted to make sure that it was perceived as perceptual art. I'm not sure it really is art. I'm not sure I'm a real artist, but I think I'm an artist with like a lowercase a. But at any rate, it was lovely to do. It's lovely to look at. And every damn time I go back down there, I reintegrate with the land and the bridge and the bayou, and I start to fall back in love with the whole thing. It's really kind of sad that I continue to get sucked into my own idea, and perpetually so. But at any rate, this color scheme was a great idea. It wasn't necessarily my idea, but I did see the value in being able to pull it off. I colored in a drawing of McKee Street Bridge, a blueprint of McKee Street Bridge, at the show at the public library. I colored it aquamarine pencil. I had colored in about 11 historic bridges for that show, and Paul Giudice, the photographer, had done a series of other black and white photographs of historic bridges and all the bridges. We photographed all 52 of the, at that time, existing bridges over the bayou. There are more now, but that's what we basically did for the show. And I went to the bridge engineer, and I said, hey, what do you think of this? And he says, oh, I like it. I said, can I paint this bridge this color? And he said, sure. And so since he fell for it, I began to take it seriously. And then I waited to his retirement. And his last day of work at the city, I went into his office and got him to sign an agreement that I could paint this bridge aquamarine. And once he was safe, then the paint was basically, you know, there's nothing, you know, the paint was available at Frank Goldberg's house, you know, and because Fletcher McKee, a fine painter, was doing a color scheme over there. So I grabbed some things I thought were appropriate and amusing, and I took the buckets and went down there, and I began to use those as my original color test. Then I went to Butte Paint and worked on those colors and refined them into more of what I really wanted. And I somehow was very fortunate to meet this crazy cowboy character, pretty much my age, running that paint company, and named James Butte IV. And we went and we visited, and he was very jaundiced about the entire thing. He didn't like artists. He thought I was a real flake, and he was told to stay away from me and all that kind of stuff. And then we went out on a little ride together. He looked at that, looked at the idea. I talked to him a while, and he said, well, two fools met. I'm going to give you that paint. And I said, okay, great. I don't know how much it cost. It could have cost a fortune. But then again, once I got to know Jim really well, I began not to trust him. And, and I found out one day that he had 3 grades of paint, but there was only one paint being made in the back room. So no matter what price you paid, you got the same paint. So that amused me just greatly.
Marketing.
Yeah, marketing, ma'am, marketing. Shell, let's go to this other picture of, yeah, I'm not even on my subject anymore. You know that? Let's go to this picture of McKee Street Bridge. This shows where the Bayou and McKee Street Bridge are located. This is a reinforced concrete bridge, a very popular technique about this time in our history. Joseph Gordon McKenzie designed it with this Bendix moment mathematical method of placing the concrete curves over the center support beams of the bridge, which would give the maximum force of lift or protecting against shear forces extended out in the weaker areas out there over the roadway. The bridge could actually stand up as a reinforced structure, but with the concrete girders that he affixed to this bridge, it has tremendous power and lift and capacity to last a long time. This is a very nice structure, and it can be saved, and it can be here much longer. Because of the engineering that went into it, it was eligible to be nominated on the National Register, and our organization did put it on the National Register a number of years ago. I forget, it all runs together. Please forgive me for not knowing when. And that's a great thing. It's a very interesting crossing in the bayou. It's 110 feet wide. It's slightly skewed to make a little curve in the river match with the navigation. It's 44.5 feet above the mean water level. Plenty of room for continued use of tugboats and whatever needs to get up there. And they still get up there, by the way. While I was painting this bridge, the delivery of fuel for Southern Pacific Railroad had arrived. The tugboat operator had dropped off the thousands and thousands of gallons of diesel for the railroad. He came up with his boat and the barge and stopped by the bridge and hollered, "How do I get out of here?" I went down, got on the boat, and showed him. We went to Allen's Landing, turned up White Oak Bayou, nudged it up, backed it out, drove it down, and he dropped me back off. That was a lot of fun. Very unusual day, but there were a lot of unusual days on the bayou. And there were unusual reasons to be there, too. For example, one of the reasons I went and revisited McKee Street Bridge was in 1977, because a guy named Josh Freeman, who was giving the tours of the bayou in a flat-bottom boat, found the body of Joe Campos Torres and began to report it to the media that he had found this body in the bayou at Raccoon Bend, which is a curve in the bayou along where the power plant behind the substation. So I visited with my friends. We went back down to the bridge. I had this idea in my mind for many years that this is where it all happened, but this is not where all the beating happened. The beating happened uptown near San Jacinto Street, and his body floated down due to the natural 4-foot tidal flux. But at any rate, this is a terrible event, but it was one of the germs of being glued to going back to that structure as an important thing. Let's go, please, to this picture of the Elysian Viaduct. This bridge is elevated, and because it's elevated, you can still drive through there and have a continuous sense of what this land was like. You can drive through there and you can look and you can see thousands of feet in the distance of green space, mowed or unmowed, green space. And you get an idea of where Frosttown was. And when they do the redo of this bridge, the original plan was to elevate the bridge because it is a bridge replacement program. But when they realized that I was not going to like that, I think they became terrified of my response. They really got nervous when they were showing me the plans. TxDOT, our dear friends at TxDOT, suddenly decided they had to put this bridge on the ground and provide an exit at Runnels. Really, does this make any sense to you? I mean, really, come on. So you're at the airport. You're coming into town. You dropped off the toll road. You either want to go 59 or you want to go down the new Elysian Bridge. What are you thinking? Are you thinking, boy, I'm going to take this high-speed route to Nymphas? Huh? No, you're going downtown to something else. So there's really virtually no need to drop you off at Runnels so that you can take a turn to the warehouse district or to that location. In other words, all the development in that neighborhood probably does not depend on this exit. So I began to ask around, and I was told on the quiet that perhaps there was a downtown management district plan to put a tunnel in there, and they needed that extra space from Ronald so they could enter the tunnel underneath the baseball stadium to connect with 288. Okay, this is very amusing. We don't do tunnels that well here. If you've been here doing tropical, we don't do them too well. But it's not so important that they do the tunnel. What's important is they got paid to make the plan for the tunnel. At any rate, I'm a little irritated with TxDOT. See, TxDOT said to me, he said to me and Julian Cartinas, who isn't here today, a realtor associate who is in contact with that neighborhood and sells property in that neighborhood and sort of represents the group in a sense. He says, Julian says, what about this? Let's have this bridge elevated. Why can't we elevate the bridge? And the guy says at TxDOT, the head guy over there says, Julian, if you get me one letter from any elected official saying that we should elevate that bridge, we'll do it. So Julian comes back a week later with a letter from Rodney Ellis. And they read the letter and go, oh, I don't know, we can do that. We'd have to do this, we'd have to do that. I don't know if we can do that, Julian. So it's just hilarious. What I'm getting at here is TxDOT basically is so powerful, so wealthy, so independent, so incredibly arrogant. Very nice people, but a very arrogant culture. They're fundamentally operating, they just basically are going to do what they want to do, which I can understand. There's great benefits in that. I'm sure I would be the same way if I were in that position. This is the view of the Elysian Viaduct as it snakes its way gingerly across the entire community, which is okay with me, because if they rebuilt it high up in the air, they would have very little impact on the archaeological deposits that are within Frosttown. But because they're doing this massive destructive thing, Lewis and I will be highly entertained by the new archaeological dig we're going to do at Frosttown. So fundamentally, I win either way. I get to do interesting archaeological investigations at the state's expense, and academically, it's charming, isn't it? But anyway, I believe sincerely that this should have never been done the way it's being done. And obviously, even after Senator Rodney Ellis had asked them to elevate the structure and do it a different way, it hasn't worked out so far. So I am in a lawsuit with TxDOT now over the value of property they're offering our organization for the square foot that they're taking from us. Square footage. Yes, sir.
One other point, if they lower it, the horse-drawn carriage people are probably out of business. On the other side of the bayou is where all the horse-drawn carriages that are in town locomotive
Where they stable.
Well, no, the horse-drawn carriage people cross McKee Street. And, and he has an excellent photograph of that activity. Please show.
Stables underneath the Elysian.
Yes, there are, but you could always move a stable. One of the other points about this this bridge, let's move to the next bridge. All I'm going to do is bitch and complain. Let's go to this one, please. This photograph number 8 in the scheme. Okay, this is a wonderful photograph, 1993? No, I think 86. 1986. Oh my gosh. 1986. What is this? This is the Houston Belt and Terminal, Bastille and Trunnion Railroad Bridge over Buffalo Bayou, now under US 59. This is what it really looked like when trains were running on it. And it was a lot of fun to hop a freight and get up on top and go go across the bayou on this bridge back in the day. When I could run and catch trains, I used to do that. I mean, kind of like a slow dog at this point.
You can get to it from the hike and bike trail. You just turn on Nance Street where all the heads are piled up and go down towards the bayou.
Yes, you can. And if you have a machete, you can cut your way through the 35 homeless people that live there. Or not, you know. But at any rate, this is a fabulous bridge. It was built by the Wisconsin Bridge and Iron Company in 1911 under the direction of Joseph Strauss, the engineer with the Strauss Bridge Company. He developed the Bastille and Trunnion as a particular type of bridge. It's one of the bridge types that originated in North America. The first ones are in Chicago, the beautiful patina on the bridges across Chicago River in downtown. Those are his bridges. Strauss went on to be credited with the building of the Golden Gate Bridge in 1938 in San Francisco. Although he didn't really design it, his design was far uglier than the one that's there today, but he still was the chief bridge engineer and is credited with doing the Golden Gate. But anyway, it's a wonderful bridge. And when TxDOT met with me many years ago and said, Kirk, what do you want to do? I said, oh, move the freeway 14 feet, let's save this bridge. Move it 7 feet down here, let's save the Kansas MK&T warehouse. And they said, and let's save these trees. And they said, yeah. And then I came back one day, it was all gone. And today, please, this photograph number 9. Photograph number 9 shows the geared back of the bascule where they use the gears to lift the bridge up and down. The counterweight has been duplicated and set aside. TxDOT has shown some sensitivity in the way they've managed this. Because of it's in the condition it's in, and because it's inconvenient, TxDOT has refused to list this bridge on the National Register. It's a shame that it's not on the National Register. I understand where they're getting at. They own it. They're responsible for it. They're making an effort, and they don't want to have to dilly-dally around any of these regulations. But what's important to understand, pardon me, about the National Register system is you can put a structure on the National Register, but you can't necessarily save it from TxDOT, because TxDOT basically has some sort of superseding agreements with everybody, and they have their own state historic officer, who's a very nice fellow, and they control all the engineering information. Unless I hire my own bridge engineer and develop my own lawsuit about these structures, it's really a moot point. You know, they run the game, and that's the problem. They run the game, and whether or not they run the game ethically, I don't really know. I don't have enough authority to know. Yale Street Bridge, for example, is a bridge that I placed on the National Register. It is a Joseph Gordon McKenzie 1931 concrete expanded girder bridge over Yale Street in White Oak Bayou. It's not in the picture system. It should be saved. It could be saved. They could come up with a technique to do it. But there's a lot of pressure on them not to save it. There's money available, and there's developer pressure and developmental pressure in the neighborhood. So they're basically going to spend a lot of money and probably not save it, but they're going to still wind up with the same size of roadway. So after the entire exercise, you don't really get anything. Hill Street was a bridge that was a turn bridge, a swing bridge. I believe it was painted Venetian red. The original, it's been destroyed many years ago, before 1938 when this bridge was built. This is a wonderful steel girder riveted structure. It has 4 major steel girders and 3 spans. It crosses Buffalo Bayou. It's got an incredibly beautiful Art Deco detail. And the state of Texas, I put it on the National Register a number of years ago, and I was fortunate enough to be called by the state and asked, what should it be repainted? What were its original colors? I didn't actually lie about this, but I didn't really have good information. I had an old photograph in which I thought that the bridge was gray. I found the photograph later and realized it was just dirt. But anyway, so it's a good excuse. I got them to paint the bridge aluminum, like the silver it was originally painted. The aluminum coating on it now looks as if it's aged silver, so I think it's very appropriate. I also dug up from a previous project the original gray colors of the battleship Texas, measure 21 gray, and was able to get them and persuade them to kindly paint a lot of the support structure gray, measure 21 battleship Texas gray. And the other fun thing was I used the same railing design, powdery gray skies, the old butte paint color for this. Please show this picture of the deco style railing, using this beautiful hand railing which protects from these fine sidewalks across this bridge. Now remember, this was Joseph Gordon McKenzie, city bridge engineer, 1938. Really elegant design in a steel bridge. It was savable, easy to save, easy to repair, expensive. Now the city bridge engineers that were doing the final inspection are very nervous about this because it's lost 10% of its steel in rust. Oh well, I guess they don't have a sense of humor. But and if you stand out in the center of it and the concrete truck goes over, it's a lot of fun to take that ride. Now, think of this, 1938. Think of our culture in 1938. In the newspaper article where I was digging up stuff about the opening day celebrations for this structure, there were all sorts of things about these members of the Nazi Party coming to Houston for weddings. And all of a sudden it dawned on me, it's 1938. The swastika is flying over the Strand in Galveston. were doing business every day with the Germans. And that same guy that was the head of that operation in Galveston for Germany was a yachtsman, and he was out studying the Gulf, studying our channel. He came back immediately when the war started in a submarine. And he did a lot of really good work down there before we caught up with him, because he knew what he was doing. Anyway, let's move down to this other subject of interest. This is photograph number 12, the Galveston, Houston, and Henderson Railroad Bridge. This is now a bike trail. This was the first crossing of a rail system over Buffalo Bayou. This was the Galveston, Houston, Henderson Junction Railroad, which was formed before the Civil War but built after the Civil War, ran through and cut through Frosttown, connecting the Texas and Central Railways to the north of the bayou to the Galveston, Houston, Henderson Railroad to the south. And maybe another one was the Wobbly Bobbly in business at that time, the one running to Columbia. Was the tap running then or later? I can't. Okay, anyway, this was a connecting railroad, a very, very powerful thing to do after the Civil War, to be able to connect the cotton operations out towards Hempstead with, and the other operations eventually going all the way to Henderson, all the way down to the ports in Galveston and the ports in Houston. This is a modified Whipple truss structure made of steel and riveted. I believe it was built in 1917. It is eligible for the nomination to the National Historic Register. I was fortunate enough to be asked what color to paint it, and I recommended dark green, River Oaks green, the color that Imahog used on the window shades at her house, which was developed by the Butte Company. Yeah, the shutters. Apparently they don't know what dark green is, but it is green.
It's black green.
Well, this is just green. Anyway, it's nice. It's not an unsuccessful activity. It turned out to be the same green that the state of Texas is painting every other bridge green. I thought they were so creative to ask. See what I mean by arrogant? Friendly arrogance. Friendly, all friendly. This is a wonderful thing here. Let's look at picture number 13. Let's talk about this is a fabulous piece of history. This is the San Jacinto Street Bridge as it crosses. It's 428 feet long, and the rest of it's in a picture I have somewhere, but it's covered up with buildings now. This is a 110-foot wide concrete modified open spandrel arch bridge, reinforced concrete structure. Put in here about 1914 is the sister bridge to the Main Street Viaduct, or the Montgomery Avenue Viaduct, as it was originally called on the map. Yeah, weird, true. It replaced the Willow Street Bridge, which was a Swedish-designed steel structure that carried the trolley, and it was a swing bridge. And you're the one that dug that up. I don't know how you found that. Ah. Everyone reads that paper from 1914, you know. Anyway, this is really a beautiful structure, a beautiful sister structure. And beside this building are two very valuable pieces of evidence of the history of our city. And since they're so valuable and so irreplaceable and so well done, they're so well done that they haven't succumbed to any kind of flood damage. They're brilliantly built. One is the 49 San Jacinto Street intake for the jail system, which was previously Central Grocery or Schumacher Grocery Warehouse, a big grocery operation. This was that one that's further down. And the other one is the Tex-Pac building, where an Italian gentleman developed a bunch of sausage manufacturing and drying and distribution, and had a great aroma, apparently. And also Captain Griffin, the first woman pilot in Texas, had her office there, and her steam tug, the New Brunswick, was parked downstairs. And there's a bunch of steel ladders here. There's a steel ladder to a door. She would take the tugboat, tie it up, climb up there, and take orders on the phone for sand and gravel, and go out to Galveston Bay and get them and bring them back. But these are wonderful pieces of evidence of how the shallow draft channel was used, the history of Houston as a port city, and I feel like these buildings are eligible for the National Register, should be placed on the National Register. They're both owned by Harris County, And Harris County should probably make an effort to save them and redevelop them and repurpose them for commercial use. Now, after saying that, of course, I want you to realize that they intend to scrape these structures for flood control purposes. And I'll get to that in a second. Please, let's show the sausage factory, the other side of the Tex-Pac building. This was a Joseph Finger building, built in 28, and then 10 years later an addition was made. J.N. Taub also operated a candy distribution operation there. Shell and gravel Model T trucks and a steam-powered drag line were originally operating there to move materials from the bayou into parts of this building for distribution. And can we also now go to, please, another photograph of the lower water's edge of the Tex-Pac building, photograph number 15. This shows the door and the ladder and the interface to the bayou of this important structure. Point to the ladder, he says, kindly. Right here at the extension of the fingers, the ladder from the water. It's just steel rebar embedded into the wall. And this is a wonderful photograph. Photograph number 16. This is a photograph of Houston Police Department in a drill at Allen's Landing in the mock-up redo of the port. And I wanted to point out that this is a beautiful bridge. Charles Tapley did a wonderful redo of the M&M building for the school when that happened. But also, this bridge is also the same kind of bridge. It was built by L.F. Doormat in 1912, 1913. And it was built by a company out of St. Louis, Missouri. Same people who wound up building the other bridge. But what's important to talk about here is when the Allen's Landing dock was redone, the contractor had extra concrete riprap that was not used in the barricading of the new wall. There was an Army Corps of Engineers permit to place concrete material against that wall for the purpose of erosion control. The permit was exceeded. Instead of taking the material out and utilizing it somewhere else, the operator began to take in massive truckloads of concrete and dump them in the center of Buffalo Bayou and pat them down with an excavator. All of this was witnessed and documented by a jailer who photographed it and wrote down everything. And what is there is a dam, essentially, was created of concrete in Buffalo Bayou from the center line back to this wall. I don't know. All I know is...
Then came Tropical Storm Allison.
And, yeah. Okay, you're stealing the punchline, too.
That's all right.
Got a couple of punchline thieves in here, which is good. Thank you so much. But anyway, what the problem of it is for whatever reason, they got away with this. They put this material in the bayou. They tamped it down. Instead of throwing it away another way, they just put it in the bayou, and they tamped it down. And then mud comes up and settles over it. It all settles down. It becomes a dam in the river at a very important junction. The outflow of White Oak Bayou and Buffalo Bayou is a very powerful place where floodwaters go. We had Tropical Storm Allison, in which the water came up. Because of this dam, it's not a scientific statement, but the fact of the matter of it is, logically, any person would agree that a dam at this location would create a problem. You're getting less water through the space. And so what happened is the foundations for the county jail were underpinned. The alarms went off. The building thought it was in an earthquake. People that were in downtown Houston wound up dying in confined elevators and parking spaces. This may or not have contributed to anything that was like that, but it probably did. So logically, Don Green, who's now gone, Don Green got in his canoe and got a bunch of us down there. And we all investigated it. We measured it. We looked at it. We sounded it. We filmed it. We photographed it. And we went to see Art Story. And we spent an hour with Art Story. Art Story listened to us and said, "Oh, I'm glad you brought this to me, guys. I'm so glad you brought this to me." He pounded his hand on that desk and said, "Whoever did that's just no darn good. Give me 18 months and I'll fix it." Well, 7 years has passed. Art may be a man of his word, but he is a slow producer. And now what you get is, if you ask about this, you get a letter from flood control written by someone who's not exactly at the top of management, saying that it's just mud. Oh, it's just a little mud bar. It's natural. Don't worry about it. Okay, let's don't worry about it. But anyway, what I'm getting at is if these people with the Harris County Flood Control Department are willing to have a flood barrier in Buffalo Bayou at a critical juncture of two rivers, have the evidence given to them, and we followed it up with a Channel 11 news story called What's Wrong with Buffalo Bayou, in which we invited flood control to come with the camera team and be there looking about so they wouldn't look foolish. We didn't even try to shame these people. We tried to have an agreement, an honorable agreement. This is a problem, and you guys can follow up with a solution. No. So flood control is now talking about another project upstream, which I have serious doubts about. Anytime you won't remove concrete from a junction of two rivers, and you've admitted that it's a bad thing and you won't do it, how can I continue to trust such an organization? Or how can what are the expectations of taxpayers in this community of government agencies? Do we not expect them to perform the most rudimentary functions of their activity? Picture number 17. When did you do this?
That would have been, I think that would have been in the 80s too, the late 80s.
Ah, yes.
I have the date down, or maybe the night it was.
This was oh yeah, 87.
The date with the picture, but I don't.
Well, at some point about there, I took my little paint kit over to this bridge, and I painted up some of it, and I photographed it and gave it to Kathy Whitmire. She said, oh, that's a pretty good idea. Why don't you paint this one? And these guys who were lining up to get paid to paint it found out. They threw a conniption fit. I didn't know that since I painted McKee Street Bridge for almost nothing and got laughed at for working for free, I didn't realize you could get paid for this. They paid these other people $1.5 million to paint this thing 4 shades of brown, with a little Tuscan red underneath for accent. An exciting scheme. And then of course they spent a lot of money making improvements to the bayou, and I'm proud of that. And Mr. Clark Martinson was part of that team with Bob Urey at the time. And really I'm very proud of Clark and his work. But the thing of it is this is a picture of what this thing looked like before any of these improvements were made. And this is a post-improvement picture. Now this is built in the City Beautiful movement. It's a concrete bridge built in 1924. It has the beautiful shaped railings and the balustrades that are made like urns, part of City Beautiful. And what they did is they reduced the roadway width and added width to the sidewalks, and they placed in lighting. Sometimes I have the opinion that the lighting is garish and maybe overkill, but then again, I have opinions about everything. So this is the Sabine Street Bridge, another bridge that I placed on the National Register of Historic Places, in which apparently they like and aren't going to tear it down. I'm always fascinated with how they have to get rid of the Elysian Viaduct because it's so bad, but it was built the same day with the same contractors and the same material as all of the Memorial Drive bridges. But they're okay, aren't they? So, sorry. I just get so blindsided with my opinions. Please let's look at number 19, the Museum of Fine Art property, Bayou Bend Collection, the home of Ima Hogg. It's a 1967-68 cable stay suspension bridge with a wood walking surface. It's a pedestrian-only structure. Connects the parking lot of Memorial Drive to the museum exhibits. I'm using this picture as a prop. This bridge is not necessarily historically significant, but it is a prop and a way to talk about the bayou. The Flood Control District has a project called the Demonstration Project for Memorial Park. They've got millions of dollars from the River Oaks Country Club and flood control money and maybe money from the Gallery of Tours and maybe some additional county funding and some money from the city. And they have this idea, which is fundamentally driven by Harris County Flood Control and Kevin Shanley, their designer, the guy who did most of the design work on the bayou. That design work is, there's nothing wrong with what they're doing on the bayou between Shepherd Drive, Shepherd's Dam location, up towards Sabine Street. I have no complaints with this. This was an area in which the Army Corps of Engineers spared from concretizing, but they did scrape it. Scraped it and baked it completely and was void of nothing for years except for grass. And yes.
Just as a correction, because I belong to a little group called SaveBuffaloBayou.org, and you can go to the website and find out more. But $2 million of our tax dollars through Harris County Flood Control are going to strip, I believe it's 1.5 miles. They're doing a 100-foot swath where they're going to take everything out. And then $2 million from the city, also our tax money is doing this. And then $2 million from River Oaks Country Club. So it's a $6 million project to strip the bayou naked. There.
Daphne, you've also stole my punchline.
It's a trend.
I'm so old now, I'm running behind schedule. I really love that you've mentioned these things, because I too support Save Buffalo Bayou. The reason I'm holding this up is because I have a lot against this project. And those tax dollar issues to do something that may not be needed is part of it. The thing of it is the guy, yes, I see, the very man who is the alleged champion of redoing this river, Terry Hershey's friend, Dave Roskin, who she liked, and he basically was in a canoe one day with my pals, and he's on film saying, gee, there's nothing wrong with this river. It's repairing itself just fine. Oh, okay. Yes, what I'm talking about. So he basically even says, don't do anything to it. So my position on this is, let's don't do anything to it, because what we're doing right now, Daphne, is pretty clear. We're taking our tax dollars and rapidly converting them into the hands of a few other people, a very few other people, to come to a rapid conclusion on that river, which may not work. But it doesn't matter whether it works, because what really is important is that they get their money. Because in the process of getting their money, all the natural things that come into play in the system continue to occur, which are campaign contributions, the potential, thank you, in the building up of tax base, and tax base and developmental plans on the bayou are like penthouse magazines for real estate developers. It's just so exciting.
Now, one other thing, the bridge, you know the museum has shut down that bridge?
I did not know that.
Yes, they say that it's unstable, and I'm not sure I buy that, and I didn't know if you knew anything about that.
I know nothing about that.
Because they don't let people go to Bayou Bend and go over the bridge. This is recent. They've only shut it down in the last, probably about the last 6 weeks.
Well, they do want to build another bridge there. So it's shutting down this bridge.
Another project.
Oh, it's a new project.
Oh yeah, another project.
Yeah,
oh, gosh,
but I don't know if, anyway, it could be a private project. It could be a private bridge. They could be worried about it, and they could be quite sincere.
They said it's way too much.
Okay, yeah. Well, let's go out and jump on it and see.
Yeah, we can go find out.
Yeah, at any rate, anyway, so here's the thing. Our organization owns land on the banks of Buffalo Bayou. I don't see any agency running to me asking me if we felt that we've lost any of our property due to floodwaters. So why are we going for this idea of partnering up to help River Oaks Country Club save the golf course? Why don't they come up with their own positive environmental solutions? There's 1,000 ways to protect that bayou that have nothing to do with these massive flood control type projects. What I find fascinating is Kevin Shanley, who is a very good designer, good landscape architect, and by all means probably a very nice person, has done this little film that I appear in briefly. And in this film he says, I love Mother Bayou. I just want to fold her banks back a little. Well, this is brilliant linguistics. You couldn't get Goebbels to do a better job. No, because it's brilliant, because it takes you and sweeps you away into this lovely world of nature. And what they do is basically, they show you pictures of ducks in a pond in the paper, and you go, yeah, that's it, nature, conservation. And you believe it. But when you say, I'm going to fold the banks back a little bit, what you're not saying is, I'm going to run Cat 12s down there with a bunch of excavators and we're going to use brown and root. We're going to scrape and bake the bayou back about 200 feet. And then we're going to come back in after we've shaped it the way we want it into a flood channel. And we're going to put in some grass and some twigs, and we're going to call it nature. And we're going to run pictures of it with ducks, and you're going to believe it. And then we're going to probably put in a bike trail real near there. And then we're going to have the Galleria tours show the bike trail and the ducks, and then we're going to say, look, we're ready now. Come to Houston. You can ride your bike from the Galleria to downtown. So fundamentally, they're going to convert TERS money into these bigger projects along the bayou, and we do essentially run the risk of having this whole thing turn into a development ploy with this project, when it's a natural area that I feel that should be. Now, they say it's not a natural area, and they say it's not a natural area because people have done flood control revetment work. They say it's not natural because the amount of water that flows through it now is greater than it used to be. Whose fault is all this? It's the Army Corps of Engineers who regulate the dam. The dams have failed. We need federal money to repair the dams. The water's dirty. Yes. Whose fault is that? The Army Corps doesn't hold the water long enough to precipitate out the suspended solids. So the water's a lot dirtier. What happens when you run too much water through a stream? You eat the banks. You have a rapid drawdown when you stop flowing that water, and it eats the banks even further. Don Green taught me about rapid drawdown being the #1 cause of fluffing and erosion on the banks of this river. It's a natural riparian river. It can repair itself. If they fix the dam, slow the flow of the water, drop out the solids, and improve the water quality, the whole darn thing would work. So who's responsible? The Army Corps. Let's get their federal money. Let's throw our money down there. Let's stop fixing things that aren't the problem, you know? And what I see here is I would really like to have something else happen complete. I'd like to see hundreds of people put to work and trained to do natural cleanup projects and planning projects along the bank of that river, turn it into a really massive waste of money, turn it into some sort of super protective area. I don't care how much money you spend, just do it right and come up with a solution.
We've got about 5 minutes. Do you have any wrap-up? You have something?
Wrap up?
You have anything? You want to show us those things behind you, those maps and such. Anything else you want to point to there?
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
And ask for money.
Let's do questions. Oh, ask for money.
Yeah.
Tell them how to donate.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, our favorite nation.
Oh, donation, our favorite nation.
You gotta bail out if you do that.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I do. You can wait 6 minutes to do that.
Oh,
Okay.
we can't talk about how we're a nonprofit that accepts contributions?
No, you can't do that.
Okay, thank you.
But tell us about those images behind you. What about that yellowish thing? What's that?
Oh, yes, wonderful image. Thank you so much. And you made me reach for it. That's great. This is an 1891 bird's eye view map of Houston focusing on Frosttown, my area of interest. It may not be my area of expertise, but it's damn sure my area of interest. This shows riverboats. This shows the cotton operation. This could be a mill instead of the ice factory. This predates the ice factory, I think. This is Gable Street before McKee connected to the north side, before there was a bridge. This is Spruce Street, the 30-foot wide street in the center of the Frosttown community. This is Rains or Pine Street. This is Arch, Race, Lyle. I don't think there's one there. Up here is the Moody Addition, which is a sister neighborhood to the Frost Addition. Frost Addition was all sold off in April, pretty much, and a month later they began to sell off the lots in the Moody Addition. For whatever reason, the name Frosttown stuck to that community a lot more than Moody Addition ever stuck. And so if you lived anywhere near here at one time in history, you were basically considered from Frosttown.
Where's Shrimp Valley?
Shrimp Alley would be right here. It's not here yet. It would be in Shrimp's Field off of this street right here, and connecting streets that were built back through here. Like
Hispanic neighborhood called Alcatran.
El Catran. That's pretty El Catran. Yeah, we lock them up in El Catran. It's called it was called the alacran, the scorpion. It was so named by the Mexicans as the scorpion because they found these scorpions in the outhouses. But the blacks in the neighborhood called it Rat Alley because they saw rats. So I guess it's a Jungian experience.
But it was also a curving trail, looked like a tail.
That's something that we came up with.
Yeah, right.
We basically we didn't know any better, but eventually we found the actual facts. We were making it up as we went along, and then we actually learned something.